evening, everyone. I now call to order the regular monthly meeting of the Burlington Electric Commission held on the second Wednesday of the month at 5 p.m. at 585 Pine Street. And today is September 10th, and the meeting start time is 5:01. I'd also like to let the record reflect that we have a quorum present, and this meeting is being conducted in accordance with Robert's Rules of Order. Commissioners, you have received the agenda for today's meeting. Are there any proposed amendments? There are no objections or amendments. The agenda will be adopted as presented. Next, moving on, the minutes from our previous meeting held on July 23rd have been distributed. Are there any corrections that are not grammatical in nature?
Move to accept as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Okay. All right. We are now moving into, we'll now open the floor for public comment. Each speaker is asked to state their name and limit their remarks to 2 minutes. I know we have one person who's here for public comment. Is there anyone online, just so we know?
I don't see him.
Okay. Alan, would you like to come up?
There's a 2-minute limit now?
We didn't know how many. Please feel free to explain your
I won't
case.
waste your time. How about that?
That sounds fantastic.
Hello, my name is Alan Bierke. I'm a resident of Burlington. And as many of you know, I have been coming here regularly since 2022 to talk about the fees that BED charges that are outdated, particularly with the advent of the smart meter system. And in March of 2024, you folks approved a set of new fees after the department had done their study and determined that the initial service fee, for example, which was charging customers $30 to switch from, an account on Oak Street over to an account on Killarney, was actually should be $6, not $30, a 500% reflection of overbilling, and that for a new customer coming in, that fee should have been $15 and was $30. So you approved the new fees, dropping it to $6 and $15, and then I came and visited with you earlier this summer and said you approved it, but the department never filed it with the PUC. So they actually eventually did file it with the PUC on August 4th, and then abruptly dismissed it on August 21st. No explanation in the public record. And in communicating with Emily Stebbins-Wilt, she tells me that they plan on coming back to you in October with some revisions to the fee schedule to reflect, I guess they had an accounting error that the PUC pointed out to them, as well as they want to update it to reflect the current wages and vehicle expenses. I am encouraging you to be proactive in doing this sooner rather than later. I know $24 doesn't sound like an awful lot of money, but it does buy dinner for 2 at Chipotle with beverages and the sidewalk. And when you look at the number of people that this is impacting, it's well over 5,000 Burlingtonians every year. The aggregate is $110,000 that you're overcharging them for something that you know costs less, and you've known this for years. When you look at the aggregate over time, since Barbara Grimes announced in the 2013 town report that it was completely rolled out, smart meters are in effect, and we're seeing the benefits today. If you look at from 2013 until today, that is over $1.7 million in overcharges, not just fees, overcharges adjusted for inflation. So I know you've got $1 million rec problem. This is as significant as that. And I hope that you will treat it as such, because it matters at the individual level, it matters to the 5,000 times that you're doing it, and it certainly matters in the aggregate. So they've already pulled it off of the PUC docket, and they say they're gonna come back to you in October. So be it. But if they don't come back and ready to go in October, I ask that you tell them to go back and file what they have, because they've got an approved fee schedule from you and the Finance Board. And if they do come back in October, I would ask that you add to the resolution approving that they file it no later than December 15th. Should be plenty of time to get it done. But don't let them blow it off for another 18, 19 months like they did this time, and then say, oh, we're gonna reevaluate. Those are my comments.
Thank you very much, appreciate it. Is there any other, anything else you're seeing or anything public comment? Okay. Thank you again. All right, now we're gonna move on to the Commissioner's Corner. It is a time for any commissioners to make a comment or raise any questions. I did want to start quickly with welcoming Allie Kenny to the commission. I'm really excited to have her here. She's an incredible addition, great board experience, great strategic thinker. I'm really appreciating her joining the board. Thank you for being here. Also want to extend our gratitude to Bethany, as this is her last meeting. Just really appreciative of your tenure of service and all the incredible questions you've asked along the way, and your dedication to this board, both as a member and also in your co-chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else have anything they wanted to, any questions or comments they wanted to bring up in the Commissioner's Corner?
I have a question, and it's about posting Bethany's vacancy. I don't see it on the city website, so for the public's benefit, on the City of Burlington's website, there is a board list of current vacancies for boards and commissions, so people might not be aware that that's out there, but I'm just wondering if we have any information about when that will be, if Bethany has officially entered her resignation yet, and when that, from the city clerk's office, when that will be posted.
I don't.
Okay.
I don't know when Commissioner Whitaker might have shared that with Lori Elberg.
I have not. Do I need to tell her?
Yes,
Okay.
that'll be the first step. That would explain it. So if you let her know that this is your last meeting and that you're not going to be able to
Okay.
continue on the commission, then she'll be able to put it on that posting, and there'll be a period of time for applications, and then the council will act on it at a later date. And if you need Lori's email, just let me know.
We also have the other commissioner check-in at the end, but is there any other Commissioner Corner questions or comments just at the start of the meeting? Okay. All right. Hearing none, we'll move on to the GM update.
Very good.
Manager Springer.
Thank you. First, I just wanted to read Emily's note to Alan on the topic of the miscellaneous fees, because it came up just now. From September 3rd. So Emily had written that we had filed the fees and intended to proceed with them subject to PUC approval. However, we withdrew the tariff filing after consulting with the Department of Public Service and discovering some errors in the calculations for which we take full responsibility. Given the time that's passed since we initially updated the cost, we need to update the cost based on most recently available labor, fringe, and vehicle rates. We will be bringing an updated proposal to the Electric Commission at their October meeting, and then we'll proceed to Board of Finance and City Council for their approval before refiling with the PUC. Hopefully, this additional work will smooth the path for ultimate approval. So I just wanted to share that context. We had shared this with the Department of Public Service and in back and forth with the department's economics team. This was referenced in the letter, which I'll touch on, from Carrick Johnson, the commissioner. They discovered some issues with some of the calculations, and instead of proceeding with a flawed document, we decided to withdraw it. We could have tried to correct it, but given the changes in the fiscal years and the different rates, it made more sense to us to do it right, move it back through the process, update it fully. We're committed to bringing it to you in October. It'd then go to the Board of Finance and the Council, and then we have no intent to delay filing it, other than we do consult with the department, and I don't believe they'll have any issues with it if we've updated and addressed the errors in the calculations previously and updated the costs. But that's our plan, and as noted, that was mentioned it's not a regulatory error per se, but it was an issue that took up some of our time with the Department of Public Service, and we want to correct it and make it right before we proceed with it at the PUC. So I just want to share that. I know, Alan, you heard that already from Emily, but I just want to share that for the record. Let me jump into the GM report. So let me lead with the Department of Public Service response to the PUC letter from the 31st of July. Department shared their letter on the 29th. I know we've discussed this at length in the media, so I know commissioners are aware of this, the public's aware of this. But obviously, BED has been in receipt of the PUC letter and now the DPS letter. The DPS letter recommends a third-party review of our business processes and regulatory work. I've said it before, I want to say it again. We acknowledge we take accountability for the McNeil rec error and any of the other instances where we didn't perform to expectation in the regulatory process. Take that process very seriously. And so we're hearing from the regulator that we haven't met performance, then our commitment is that we're going to work as hard as we possibly can to meet their expectations, meet our expectations, meet the expectations our customers have for us. I did want to highlight, as in the report, when we first learned about the McNeil rec error issue and some of the other concerns that the department had laid out for us earlier this year, we took certain steps at that time, including having a regular quarterly meeting for principals between the Department of Public Service and BED, a good opportunity for improved communications and to work through some different issues at a high level. Those are ongoing. We have one coming up in the next week or so. We also did the fairly lengthy rec process review for different interdivision, interdisciplinary meetings here, resulting in a fairly lengthy memo and document that is in effect. We literally have received emails about the verification process from our team, confirming well in advance of deadlines that we've entered the rec data into the NEPOL GIS correctly. We have verification processes such that we can't have and will not have a single point of failure. If there's a staff issue, a transition issue in the future, we have multiple divisions, multiple teams that are responsible between the entering of data, the verification of the data being entered. So we're monitoring that process. That's ongoing. We have a similar review underway for our energy efficiency programs, again, in consultation with the department. They gave us some feedback on the rec process memo. We've worked with them to get their feedback on the scoping for this efficiency process review that's underway currently. Our goal is to try to have that work either complete or nearly complete by October. So this is looking at the energy efficiency program, including the efficiency charge budget, the TEPF, Thermal Energy Process Fuel Fund budget. Some of that work's been complex more recently because we have had, in my view, good legislative changes that have enabled us to spend funds in more innovative ways in that program. But the overlapping legislative changes and regulatory compliance, I think, has become a little more complex than perhaps we had realized. And I think having this process document laying out the different steps will help us with compliance in the future. And then we have a similar process, uninitiated by the regulator, but on our own initiative, to look at permit dates, deadlines, and renewals, and to document and catalog all the various permit renewals. We have succession, happening in some key positions expected in the next several years, and we want to make sure that for somebody coming in new, they have all the clear guidelines for how to enter, any key information, how to make sure permits in their area are renewed. So we're trying to do this in a couple of different areas. In addition to those steps, which we had taken essentially previously, we have some other steps. We are currently posted for 2 positions in policy and planning. One is newly vacant because we had an employee who took a position at another organization. One was being held vacant for budget savings, but that feels like not the right thing to proceed with now. We want to get those positions both filled. We want to bring in additional capacity in the policy and planning team to support our regulatory and power supply work. So those are posted. We hope to get great candidates and be able to move forward with hiring. We have as well, with one exception, which is the EV announcement I'll touch on later, we are going to pause for an indefinite period of time any incentive program changes unless mandated by our regulators, any new initiatives that aren't already underway, any new kind of grant-funded initiatives that aren't already underway. We have a number of great things in the pipeline, so I don't mean to say that we won't continue to do good and innovative work to support the net zero progress and the strategic electrification and energy efficiency progress that we all care about. It's more that I think our pipeline is significant, our staff burden is significant, and we need to make sure we get everything that's in the pipeline now implemented well before we consider new changes. And I want to stress test our process reforms that we're making and make sure they work. And one way to do that is not to make changes, say, between 25 and 26 and go through some dry run drills on our own. So this is one area where we've talked with, certainly we'll talk with the commission, we'll talk with city council. We're going to be very reluctant to take on new initiatives for a period of time, and we'll try to work with you on any items that are of interest, but we're going to try to really maintain that to the extent we are needing to rebalance between our core focus and some of our innovative activities. We've tried to be on the leading edge with innovation, but our core focus is also really important for the moment now. And we also have, and this has been ongoing now for a number of weeks, what I would describe as a fairly intensive internal weekly regulatory review that's typically an hour at least between the Policy and Planning Energy Services Finance team, Emily and Mike and myself. And we're covering the list of deadlines, dockets, what's due this week, what's due next week, what's coming up, where are our comments, where are our filings, what reports are we needing to submit. We have a fairly detailed spreadsheet. I won't say the burden isn't significant, more so maybe than it's been in the past, but this process is helping us, to meet it. I personally am reviewing every single thing we're filing at the PUC, which is maybe a level of micromanagement of that process that's not appropriate for the long term, but feels appropriate in the short term. I am also drafting, and in some cases in my own name, submitting documents, because I realize that our team that's working in this space is going to be taxed, and I want to contribute personally to that work and to editing where I can as well to contribute. So we've taken all those steps. All of that said, there is no doubt that a third-party review will give us some other good recommendations. I have no doubt about that. So we are going to work collaboratively, constructively, cooperatively with the department and then with the PUC if they do as the department suggested and open up a docket and say that they approve this third-party review. I think from the media reports, it sounds like it would be a 6-month process. To be clear, we have no control over the scope, no control over who the vendor is, and we pay for it. So that's the way this works under the proposed state process. That said, we look forward to engaging with that third party, sharing the various aspects of our work, the things that we've done already, taking in any recommendations or best practices they can share, getting a new set of eyes on some of the reforms we've made and see if they can offer us some ideas that are different or better. Because ultimately, for us, and I'm sure the commission feels similar, we take responsibility, but we want to move through this and get improved and get back to the point that I think we've been at most of the time that I've been here, and I think historically where we've had a good regulatory track record. It's very important to us, it's very important to me, I know it's very important to you, and we're very committed to making that happen. So I imagine you all may have questions on that. I'm happy to pause now before I go into the rest of the update.
I have a question. It sounds extremely thorough, so I commend you. It sounds like you have a great plan. I'm wondering, you have a great list of strategic initiatives metrics. Is there a way that you're capturing these process improvements in form of a metric? Because I assume obviously the best metric to show you're doing it well is no mistakes that show up in a regulatory environment. But I'm wondering if there's a way that you're tracking number of business processes covered, or like some metrics that can help you make sure you're making the right progress, so we can track that and you can.
It's a great question. I think we are doing that to some extent in kind of our own internal reviews, but I don't think it's reflected in the strategic dashboard. So I think Emily and I can talk more about how to reflect that. But our goal will be to have zero issues,
yeah.
Zero filings that are late, zero filings that are incomplete, zero filings that have any inaccuracies in them. I'm confident we won't be perfect. Nobody is. Nobody in the utility regulatory space is. But I'm also confident we can do better. So we want to track kind of from a date certain, are there new issues that are popping up so that you know what those might be, or are we dealing with everything and there haven't been any issues? So I think we can work to reflect that on the dashboard.
Okay.
Yep.
So I just want to make sure I understand, because also going through the letter and looking at some of the media reports, it sounds like the basic operations, like lights go on when you hit the switch, customer satisfaction, all of that is really high marks.
Right.
And then I think the innovation generally has also gotten really high marks. So it's kind of that middle piece of the business that there's been a little bit of stumble. And it's also like behind the scenes, right?
Mhm.
So it's a little harder to see and understand and kind of capture.
Right.
But, so, and what you're just saying to us is, of course, the base always stays the top priority, but that some of those initiatives, we'll just pause that to get that middle shored up.
Yeah.
I think tracking it's a great idea. I had the same thing also, so you, just a dashboard or something, but
Yeah.
I don't know how, it seems like it's hard to measure.
Yeah, I think that's part of the problem, but it would be helpful to know if you're making the right progress before it's too late.
There's a qualitative element to it, but there's a quantitative element as
Yeah.
well that we can, pick a date and say, okay, did our filings get in on time? That's an easy thing to measure. I can tell you that they have been, but it's not always easy to do when you have overlapping deadlines and staff constraints, capacity constraints. But that's one metric. It's a little more qualitative, but are we finding that our comments are being well received, our filings are being well received, or are we being critiqued, and if so, on what basis for the future? So that could be another metric. I'm interested, separate from kind of this particular piece, I'm interested too to track for the commission and really to present for the third-party review, just the scope of the regulatory work, which I think is much enlarged from maybe what it might have been, say, a decade ago. Because in the energy efficiency space and in the incentive program space, for example, there's a proliferation of new laws and requirements. Again, all good things, well-intentioned things. But there's an increasing kind of level of intensity to the regulatory work. I think it's important that we track that because we're a municipal utility, we're dual regulated, we have a certain staff capacity. We want to be affordable as well. So presenting to you kind of where our regulatory workload volume is something I'd like to find a way to document as well. That'll be important.
So maybe two pieces, the energy efficiency side and the regulatory side.
Yeah. Yeah, we're looking at those, both of those pieces.
Yeah, because that's where the weakness is right now.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where we've had some challenges. And so, yes, I think your characterization of it is well described. I think that DPS was gracious in saying that we are very reliable. We have very few customer complaints. I think they've acknowledged that our net zero bonds and initiatives have been well received in the community. So it's a question of some of our business processes, some of our structure around the regulatory work, perhaps not being where it needs to be. There's a variety of things we can look at there.
Just to state it explicitly from this conversation, the other piece too is if, you taking a look and thinking about what that dashboard looks like or those metrics look like, and then being able to come back to the commission so we can also help
Yep.
understand, communicate, ask questions.
Agreed.
And check in on that, so we're being good partners.
Absolutely.
And I have a few, if that's okay. So for the process of hiring an auditor, you mentioned it. Is that going to be driven by the PUC, and will that be in an existing docket?
Couple things to share there. I guess the first would be, it's not going to be an auditor per se. And I think this is important just to put on the record, because I've seen some different comments of like, well, why aren't they audited every year? Well, we are audited financially every single year by an
Oh, yes.
independent auditor. I know the
Yeah.
commission knows, but I'm just sharing for the public record. We have a financial audit, and we've had, I think for a number of years, running a clean unmodified opinion in the financial audit. Here, we will have a consulting firm, in all likelihood, that has hopefully expertise in municipal utility work and other energy utility work, will be selected by the department. And the next step procedurally to your question is the PUC would open a new docket if they accept the department's recommendation. And within that new docket, they would procedurally want to issue an order taking the department's recommendation under advisement, presumably seeking any comments on it, and then putting it into effect in some way. So we're waiting on that step in order to advance beyond kind of where we are now.
Thank you, that's helpful. My next question is there, you know, we've been talking about this from the rec issue, and you had to put a lot of processes in place, putting a lot of other things in place. We're talking about good ideas, about additional reporting and stuff like that, but there's always a trade-off with these things when it becomes, so the documentation and the oversight gets in the way of doing the work, right? And so obviously, there's a standard that needs to be hit that is clear. So the question then becomes, how do you build these processes efficiently so that they're value add and they prevent problems? Are there, to that end, and maybe this will come out of this process, but are there existing industry frameworks? Like I know in cybersecurity, there's a whole bunch of them, and I'm sure you use many of them in other areas. Is there a regulatory framework? Do you use anything? Is there something that you guys have thought about there?
It's an interesting question, and I do think it get covered a bit in the third-party review. We are a little unique in the Vermont context, in our regulatory environment generally, and then within the Vermont context, we're specifically unique as a distribution utility and an energy efficiency utility.
Yep.
So certainly we have a model with Efficiency Vermont, Vermont Gas. We have 2 other efficiency utilities that do work in that space. Not every state has efficiency utilities, some do, certainly. So there may be analogs where we could look at things in some of those places. You know, some of the, if I think through some of the items that were mentioned there, you know, some of them may be simply addressable through greater oversight. Some may be process kind of focused. I'm not sure. I mean, Chris is here, is going to present, and might be a good opportunity to ask him a little bit about it from the efficiency side, if there are any other kind of standards or best practices that we see in the regulatory space that we're aware of that we can implement. I think to your point, I take your point. You don't want to over-process and create obstacles. I think the rec improvement process was intensive during the time period we went through it, and the document itself is intensive. But the process now that we go through of making sure that the recs are entered, having a team that can check in on that, there's a little bit of email traffic to confirm things and have a record of it, having kind of a spreadsheet. I don't know that that's particularly onerous, thankfully, because we want to create a good process and then not have it take an excessive amount of time, but be able to have a tracking mechanism to confirm. So in my mind, that's not a bad analog for us with some of these other pieces, but we're definitely open to ideas.
Great. My next question is about complexity, if it's okay to go again. And so, you know, I'm familiar from the energy efficiency side about the regulation and the different funding sources and the different reporting, and it's onerous, right? And I understand that, I understand it well, why we need it, but it's not trivial, and then there's the review and evaluation of it, and so forth. So as BED is quite an innovative municipal utility, and there's a lot of different things happening, have you looked at your staffing structure and the structure of your organization? Because I meet with you all every month, and I know how smart and conscientious and hardworking you all are and all the good things that we're doing. And it just doesn't make sense to me to see that these problems and the letter from the, you know, the PC and other stuff compared to all the good work that we know that you're doing. So it brings to my mind of a sort of system or process or structure issue, and I'm wondering, have you looked at that as part of this? And I know you talked about the 2 hires,
Right.
But is there a new director of regulatory position? Is there an analog for similar sized municipal utility in another place where how they do it? And so,
Yeah, well, I want to echo your comment that I think we have a number of folks doing great work. I think this burden, the regulatory burden, falls on a small share of our team, and that same small share is dealing with a number of other high-profile issues, including, you know, both in the regulatory space and outside of it. So I do think we are taxed and stretched. There's no question in my mind that in certain areas we're feeling that. So that the hiring of those 2 positions is intended in part to provide some short-term support. We have a position that we had intended to hire as a engineer position in the efficiency utility. It's currently vacant. I had the exact same thought that you had just now, that we might repurpose that position for some sort of a regulatory supervisor position in the efficiency space particularly. I'm holding on that because I'd like to have that flexibility to make those decisions with the benefit of the regulatory review, the third-party review. So I was conscious not to take action there that might, lock in a particular org chart structure or a particular reporting structure that might not be optimized and then have to go back and, but to your point, I think it's very much on our radar, and we'd like to kind of ask when somebody comes in and looks at our org chart, the way we organize our regulatory work and where the burden falls and what the burden is, would that position help if it was crafted in certain ways, and where should it sit? Those are things that I think we want to dig into, and hopefully we'll have the flexibility to do.
Great.
Yeah.
I do have another question, but I'll give a chance for other commissioners.
Mine was I had one that was a little bit of a tag on to that last question from Andy. I guess I was looking, your two main areas you've highlighted of process improvements are around the rec and the energy efficiency programs, correct?
That's right.
And then when I'm looking at it, I'm wondering if all of those actually fit under here, because it seems like cost allocation here and different, like in the case numbers outlined there.
Right.
And so my question is, have you done the root cause analysis on each of these to figure out what is
Yeah.
the root cause of the errors? Because I think the organizational design question is a good idea, but is the root cause time or process or what? I'm curious what your results showed.
Yeah,
on
it's
that
a bit of a
analysis.
disparate group, but I think if you were to take it by topic, that the energy efficiency regulatory space, it covers about, close to 3/4 of the issues outlined. There's certainly the McNeil rec error. There's certainly the, we had one error within the rate case in FY25. And of course, that's one error we've had, can't remember, I think we've had 4 or 5 rate cases now filed since the pandemic. Most of those have been filed exactly correct, or even more so than correct, because we had room above what we requested. So we did have one error in a rate case. I think that's addressable in a more discrete way. It was the inclusion of some one-time fees that were amortized over a couple-year period and had mistakenly been excluded, or included, I should say, in a cost of service when they should have been excluded. That's not a recurring issue. That's not a thing that we have to focus an entire process reform on. It's something we're aware of, we'll be conscious of, and we're working through the PUC process to see how we can best, return that amount to ratepayers in the current rate case to make sure that we don't overcollect based on that issue. So you put that one aside and the McNeil rec issue aside, I think the bulk of the remainder are focused very much on the energy efficiency regulatory space, the use of the TEPF funds, whether it's for district energy or within other purposes. And so I do think that we're doing some interesting kind of root cause analysis around that, both looking at the staffing in those areas, looking at the processes that we have within our incentive program, kind of tie out between our programs and the various orders and statutory authority, looking at just kind of making sure that we enhance some of the processes that may exist there. So to me, that's a space that deserves some particular attention. I will say we're structured in a way where we have multiple divisions working on that, where it crosses between budgets and regulations and statutory authority, and then sort of process focus. So we have the right kind of team thinking about it, but I'm not clear, and I don't want to say we have all the answers there yet. I think we've made some improvements. I think there's room to make additional improvement. But to me, if you really drill down on it, the McNeil rec error, we've definitely made some headway on making sure that doesn't happen again. The rate case issue, I think, is a bit more of an isolated issue. However important it might be, it's still more of an isolated issue. The energy efficiency regulatory space, to me, feels like something we need to dig in on.
Great,
Yeah.
thank you, that was helpful.
Yeah.
Commissioner Boda?
Okay, my final question is, so I want to go talk a little bit about the issue that Mr. Bierke raised around the rates and the filing of all that. So I have two questions there. One is, if you could explain for our benefit, for the public, like what is the material impact of having the wrong overhead or labor or vehicle fees? Does it mean that the rate will be, instead of $15.25, it needs to be $15.75? Like, if you could give some concrete examples about the scale and scope of that, that would be helpful. If it's if it's sort of more of an administrative, I guess, why does it, relatedly, why does it need to come back to the commission again? Maybe it's because it will materially impact that. And then, To Mr. Bierke's contention that, the public has been overcharged, the ratepayers have been overcharged, is there any way to make the ratepayers whole? And I don't know how it's viewed in a regulatory space, if that's how it's looked at or not, but those are the things that I was wondering.
Yeah, appreciate that question or set of questions. Just to be clear, the ratepayers haven't been overcharged because we've been charging the fees that are approved and in effect.
Got it.
So, one might argue that if you approved new fees every single year, you might have changed them at various ways that might have caused, as I think the commission's seen as we've gone through the process, some go up and some go down. It's not kind of a one direction thing. So it's true that in certain spaces you might be impacted in one way, and in another space a different customer might be impacted a different way. But we don't update miscellaneous fees every year as part of the rate case. That's not the practice. They hadn't been updated obviously for a period of time dating back. So I think we're right to update them. We want to get them right. What we saw and what was cited by the DPS in their letter is when we filed them and reviewed them with the economics team at the DPS, they looked into the spreadsheet and found some errors that would have caused, in some cases we might have been able to proceed with the fees because it would have dropped the fee below the level that you authorized. But in some cases, it might have gone the other direction. And we certainly don't view ourselves as having the discretion to approve a fee at the PUC or to submit a fee at the PUC higher than what you've authorized. We want to be appropriately constrained by our local approval process. And then beyond that, there's enough time that's passed, unfortunately, and I appreciate his frustration with this entire process, but there's enough time that's passed that we think it's appropriate to update the rates, which may, again, move things in both directions. Some stuff could go up or down based on that. So I want to take some issue with the idea that that's akin to the McNeil issue. The McNeil issue was a distinct error that did have a financial impact that we've worked very hard to mitigate. The miscellaneous fee issue is a set of fees that are appropriately in effect, that have been approved in a legal process at the PUC, in which we charge until we can show that those should be changed. We're in the process of doing that. That process got momentarily taken off track, and we're going to kind of revise and bring it back. So while I appreciate his frustration with it, I wouldn't agree that the ratepayers have been overcharged in any sort of context. One could argue we should review the fees every 3 years to avoid getting into a situation where it's been, a decade plus and things may have gotten out of scale. I think that's a valid critique to offer, and, I think we can talk to you all about what the appropriate timescale should be for reviewing them. I don't think it's something we necessarily carry every year. I don't know that that's the practice, but that's a fair point, and we should look at that.
I'd tag onto that as well. I was just curious, if it's brought to us in October, do you have, can you walk us through the timeline of what that looks like after October?
Yeah, so it'll come to you first. Then it has to go to Board of Finance, City Council. They typically don't like things to come at the same meeting anymore. So we'll have to look at the schedule. It could come in October, all three bodies, or it might be October and November. Once that happens, we obviously try to work ahead of time with the DPS, but we'll want their review on the updated pieces, hopefully simultaneous or prior to us bringing it to you all, but we don't always get feedback in real time like that. It's not always how it works. So we'll do our very best to get that feedback and to bring you something that should be actionable. And then it goes to the PUC once we have all those steps completed, and then we do not have control over whatever length of time it might take to be reviewed and approved at the PUC.
In light of I'm aware of the Board of Finance not wanting to see, have things in one meeting and then immediately at the council meeting. In light of the fact that this was already reviewed once and already passed Board of Finance and council, if I would encourage you to at least inquire if it was possible to try to use an accelerated timeline rather than having it to be delayed by a meeting. So if that's possible.
I can ask.
Fair.
The only time I've seen that happen has been when there's an absolute kind of exigent circumstance, which they might argue we don't have here. But I can certainly inquire.
Great, thanks.
Any other commissioner questions?
Yeah, so are we saying that at our October meeting, you're going to present us with the updated numbers?
That's correct.
Are we at that time expected to make a vote or a decision on that?
That's right. We'll update the numbers that we've presented previously. We'll show you what's changed and why, and then you'll have the ability to recommend it to the Board of Finance, City Council, so we can advance it through the process.
And I would say, especially having a conversation with the chair recently about having some of this information not be where we're seeing it for the first time right here at the meeting, then all of a sudden we have to, if we can get that in advance, to have a few days to
I think we would try to have it be part of the packet that you receive,
Right.
several days in advance. That's right.
Okay.
I can proceed if no other questions.
That's great, thank
I
you.
appreciate the discussion. I'll run through these last items a little more quickly. We've talked about it, but we're actually at the point now where we will be testing next week. Next week, yes. R99?
Yeah,
Next week.
September 15th to the 18th, next Wednesday is the actual day. There's some, we're setting up scaffolding now.
Very good.
So Wednesday's the actual run day.
So next week at the GT on the waterfront, we'll be testing the use of 99% renewable diesel for the first time ever to see if it works and to see if our use of that fuel meets all of our different state requirements. So we're working with the state on that. And if so, our intention would be to move expeditiously towards the use of R99 at the one plant within our system that's not fully renewable right now. And we don't obviously run it hardly at all, and it's not really part of our portfolio to meet customer demand. But nonetheless, we've been committed for a while to moving it towards renewable. We moved from fuel oil to B20 biodiesel, 20% and 80% fuel oil, and now we would be moving to essentially a fully renewable fuel. So stay tuned, we'll share results. This has been an important initiative for us, and it would not only make it renewable, I believe it would remove us from having the one plant that has a regional greenhouse gas initiative compliance obligation, so it actually would reduce a little bit our reporting and regulatory burden in that sense, which would be a positive as well. There's some other upside benefits to doing this, so we're looking into that. I mentioned as well that the one announcement that will proceed, aside from the pause that we're taking, which has been in the works for a period of time, will be on the 22nd of September. We're looking forward to making an announcement about the EV incentives that we have and making a response to the recent federal decision to abruptly phase out federal support for electric vehicles. So if any commissioners are interested in joining us, it's a 1 o'clock on the 22nd tentative announcement that we'll certainly keep you in the loop for, and would welcome your joining us if anybody's interested. The two McNeil studies that you all have reviewed previously, we had a forestry update at the August TUC meeting. We anticipate having an interim report from Valerity, or an interim update at the September TUC meeting, and perhaps a final report from the forestry consultant at the September TUC meeting. So as we have any materials around that to share, we'll certainly share those with the commission as well. I can say that the work has been productive in both cases, and we're excited to get some additional results that we can share. But so some updates there. As well, at the August TUC meeting, we had Synapse and Building Electrification Institute join us for a presentation on energy benchmarking and potential future energy performance metrics that we might have for mid-sized commercial buildings. The very brief sort of upshot was we did real-world modeling on 3 actual buildings in Burlington, 2 offices, one new and one older, and then a retail shop. And 2 out of the 3 looked really good when we set reasonably ambitious energy efficiency targets, and those buildings in the model would move towards electrification for a good chunk of their heating needs. In one case, the newer office building, the economics looked much poorer on a cost-benefit side for reasons that we got into there. So I think we created some interesting kind of bounds to the discussion that there could be some really positive or at least neutral use cases, some really challenging ones if we're not careful. I think the committee appreciated the expertise from those 2 groups that we brought. The modeling is available online on the TUC website from Civic Clerk from August. If anybody's interested, we can certainly share that. And we'll be looking forward to getting energy benchmarking data from the existing ordinance in spring of 2026, and we'll work with the TUC on any further policy development work they're interested in. And then last but not least, we saw, I think, a number of commissioners at the Net Zero Festival over the weekend. We had hoped to hold it on Saturday. We held it on Sunday due to the rain. We're already thinking through ideas for next year, including trying to, again, hold it on Saturday and get to the heart of the art hop as opposed to the final day of the art hop. But we appreciated having the ability to hold the festival during art hop. We're looking forward to partnering with them again and we appreciated, we didn't have all of our vendor partners with us because of the date change, but we had some interesting highlights, including having Mike and Mary broadcasting live, talking about energy efficiency and electrification on the radio. We had a really great induction cooking demo, albeit on a 2-burner plug-in induction as opposed to the full range we would have had on Saturday, from John Patterson at Shelburne Farms. And I think we're interested to have him back, talk more about induction cooking next year on a full range. And we also had Local Motion was the recipient of the Net Zero Award, Community Partner Award, nominated by Old Spokes Home. So we presented them with a nice wood and carved plaque from the generator. That's everything I have for the update.
I just wanted to commend you for continuing to drive on the, or push forward on the efficiency, especially the EV side. You know, there's just a lot of hesitancy in the market and a lot of headwinds nationally. So appreciate that you're continuing to move forward when it could be, you know, an easy time to cancel things or move away from things or stop being present for like the Net Zero Energy Festival or other places, and it's important. So appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Okay.
Thank you, General Manager Springer.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, we have the financial review.
Good evening. Okay, so I'm actually going to start with an update on the preliminary numbers, still as yet unaudited, for June. You received a version of the June results in your packet that we sent in August when there was no meeting. There's been a couple of adjustments since then as part of the year-end closing process. So we're now showing a actual net income of 2.3 million as compared to a budgeted net income of 3.3 million. Two big things that have changed since the earlier draft of this that you received in the August packet were sales to customers actually got better overall for the year. We had some unbilled revenue that should have been booked in June. It was booked in July. That was, found and corrected. So it improved sales to customers. So that helped. What didn't help, which we didn't really expect it to help, was the annual adjustment for the pension liability. So that was a $1.4 million additional expense that's appearing in the operating expense line. It affects the net income. However, it doesn't affect the Moody's metrics because it's an offset to a balance sheet transaction, really. So it doesn't factor into what they consider revenues available for debt service. So
Before we jump off of that slide, just to make a point on that, even with the McNeil rec error accounted for, when you look at the net income prior to the pension adjustment, which we see every year and is typically a swing of, $500,000, $1 million, or $1.5 million, whatever it might be, it would have been around 3.7. So it would have been an outperformance of the budget expectation, even with that significant headwind. So I only mention it because I know it's very much in our conversation and in the media and elsewhere, that we did have enough strategies in place to mitigate that, to avoid it being a material negative impact in the entirety of the fiscal year.
Yep.
This is, I think, a simple, stupid question, but where do the recs show up in the revenue? Other? Power
They're
supply.
under power supply
Power supply.
revenues.
Okay.
Yep. And they're all zeros for June because we receive rec revenue quarterly
Okay.
in September, November, February, and May. or something like that. So June is not a delivery month. The auditors began their field work last week. There's one more set of post-closing entries that we know we need to make related to the OPEB, other post-employment benefits liability. That's usually a pretty small adjustment, like, low 5 figures. So it will change the numbers a little bit, but not significantly. And so just where we stand right now in terms of the metrics, 5.03 for the debt service coverage and 1.29 for the adjusted debt service coverage ratio, which is quite good compared to where we've been some years post-pandemic. So I'll continue to update you. The October meeting, KPMG will be here for their annual presentation and discussion with you. If the financials are in shape to present, then we will, or we will present final results at the November meeting, depending, okay? So now I'll move over to July, FY26. So starting from the top, we had, so for the current month of July and the year-to-date, an actual net loss of $52,000 compared to a budgeted net loss of $279,000. So we did better than budget by $227,000. Now I'll go to the top. So sales to customers were better than budget by $296,000. Other revenues, a modest negative variance of $84,000. Most of what hits that line, Commissioner Kenny, for your benefit, is the energy efficiency utility shows up on our income statement in 2 places. Reimbursement that we receive from, so let me try this a different way. So when we pay out an energy efficiency incentive, we pay it out of sort of BED's account, and then we reimburse ourselves from the energy efficiency utility. We sort of send an invoice from one utility to the other, and the other utility compensates the other. And so we book revenue from the EEU in other revenues, but then we also have offsetting expenses in operating expense. So there can be variances in both the other revenues at the top and in the operating expense, but they essentially cancel each other out. So that's most of what's the variance in the other revenues is from EEU reimbursements being less than budgeted. No rec deliveries in July, so no power supply revenues. Moving down, the next piece is net power supply expense, and I'll take a little bit more time since we have a new commissioner. So it's net power supply expense, which is made up of transmission, fuel, purchase power, and that's it. And there's like several pages of detail on this in the packet. And it's called net expense because some of the transactions that hit fuel, purchase power, or transmission are actually credits. Okay, so there's expenses, but then there's also credits to expense that offset. And so page 8 of the packet, well, it's actually page, I think it's 6. It's labeled page 6. Page 6 of the packet is always kind of the full picture of net power supply expense, and you can see there's fuel with more detail on page 7, purchase power with more detail on page 11, and then transmission, this is the only place that transmission appears. And then you can see the rec revenues, there'll be detail on any rec revenues received during that month by source of generation. And then you'll see here a net power supply cost broken down sort of in aggregate, but also you'll see the load. So we had budgeted in July to supply 33,465 megawatt hours of energy. We actually needed to supply 33,680 megawatt hours of energy. So the dollars per megawatt hour, right? So if you have, if your expenses went up by $1 zillion, right? That isn't necessarily bad if your load also went up by a zillion megawatt hours, right? It's the cost per that really matters. So we show that here, so you can see that it was, what was it? It was worse than budget by $2.52 per megawatt hour. So going just back up, I'll go back up to the top now. All of that detail appears on this summary thing in just one line, power supply expense net. So overall for the month of July, we had a negative variance in power supply expense, $107,000. But as I just explained, lots of things going on within that. McNeil production was 15% under budget for the month. McNeil fuel is the major driver of total fuel cost. There's a little bit of gas turbine fuel in there, but it's usually, it's just about always quite small compared to the McNeil fuel. So that lowered cost. The energy portion of purchase power was unfavorable because we had a number of resources, not only McNeil, but also wind, our first light contract, and Winooski 1, due to the very low river levels. All of those produced under budget. But then we had some significant offsets as well. In the capacity markets, we had, ISO New England had they have these different levels of like the grid's in trouble, and I forget which one it was, but there was a capacity shortage of some kind. They called upon units, so we benefited from from what they call a pay for performance event, where our resources were available when they expected to be, and then similarly.
Emily, those are those are OP4 events. Operating procedure 4. Which is a capacity shortfall.
I think that's what yes, I said capacity shortage. And then the ancillary markets, we also received higher reserve revenues than budget as well. So we had some big variances in the different line items, but they were offsetting. Oh, and transmission, was also unfavorable. But all of that netted to just $107,000 worth of difference. Other operating expenses were $155,000 better than budget, so we were under budget on all other O&M. Small variance in depreciation, small variance in taxes, and then what we call sort of below the line non-operating income and expenses. We had a negative variance of just $33,000 due to the timing of work order billing, and offset by some unrealized gains on investment. I think that's.
Can you remind us again what's in other income and deductions?
It's a number of things. So it's interest income on deposits we have in the bank. It is what we call work order billing. And so when a customer asks us to do work for them, that doesn't get billed through sales, and it doesn't get billed through fees because it's not like it's not a set commodity. It's sort of engineering and design, construction. And then that would be where any grant income flows in, and as well as what we call customer contributions to capital projects. So for example, City Place or the Champlain Parkway, where our crews are doing utility work in association with those projects. We receive payments for that work. So it's a hodgepodge of different sources.
Thanks.
Yeah. The key point is that it's not related to sort of the core business of selling energy to customers. Okay, and I'll go to, usually I just do these first two pages, Commissioner Kenny. So the next thing we look at is capital spending. We're very early in the fiscal year. We spent 2% of the overall fiscal year budget. We spent just $240,000 in July. That's not atypical. RFPs are usually going out in July to get work lined up for later. Operating cash, wanted to call the commission's attention, we're reporting on this a little bit differently. Typically before, we've just been showing you the first two lines, and so this would be, I'd be saying that we had, 7.9 million or something in cash. The way Moody's calculates the days cash on hand, it's, broadly speaking, it's your unrestricted cash that's available. And what we do is we have to make payments on the general obligation bonds twice a year. And so every month we set aside cash in a special account so that when the bill is due, we have it all set aside and ready to pay. However, it's only an internal rule that we do that. The cash isn't really restricted in any sort of formal way, right? So it is technically available for that day's cash on hand calculation. So you can see the total there. And then that all results in, normally I tell you, so it's 11.713. We had budgeted to be at 11.7, so it's about an $83,000 negative variance to budget, so not bad at all. And then the debt service coverage ratio at this point, 4.92 for the last 12 months. Adjusted debt service coverage, 1.24. And 141 days cash on hand, including the $10 million line of credit. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you have something?
Oh, you go.
No, I was just saying thank you.
Questions about the first two pages or all of it? You said you only go over the first two?
Anything you want to ask is fine.
I'm curious about transmission fees, and I want to make sure I understand it. So it's labeled page 6, and it's page 43 of the packet. So there's quite a variance on transmission fees. One, I'm curious what's driving that, and is that a trend we expect to continue in terms of a negative variance for us? And then the second thing is under that load calculation, I didn't catch when I was reviewing the packet. Does that account for transmission costs per megawatt hour? Okay. So maybe that's helpful.
Emily, can I answer the transmission?
Yeah, sure.
So there's a lot of different cost causation here. The ISO New England transmission is based on our load at the time of the New England peak, or the load at the time of the Vermont peak for the month. So you can get an error by predicting your load at the time of the Vermont peak wrong or the time of the Vermont peak wrong. So there's no way to really say whether that will continue, but it also is a function of the rates, and we don't know the rates when we do the budget either. So it looks like from Casey's footnote, this is mostly load driven, so it doesn't have to continue. Next month, our load at the time of the peak Vermont peak could be lower than we expected. So it is not fair to say that because of that, it will automatically continue next month or any of the months after that. The transmission fees from Velco are very complicated, and they are a function of almost enough things to warrant a meeting on it. But it has parts of how much money Velco gets from ISO New England for the transmission that's covered by ISO's tariff, how much money they get from other sources. It has a function of our load. It's a complicated math. I would also not say that that is guaranteed to continue past this month.
Would you like to introduce yourself for Commissioner
Yeah.
Kenny's benefit?
Can we see?
I couldn't hear that.
Oh, I was just saying, do you mind introducing yourself for
Oh,
Commissioner
I'm
Kenny's
sorry.
benefit?
I apologize. My name is James Gibbons. I'm Director of Policy and Planning. My team does power supply, legislation, regulation, strategic electrification program design, long-term planning, and actually some other stuff on top of that.
Thank you.
Thank
So
you.
you'll be hearing, and rate design, so you'll be hearing from me tonight on the streetlight rate design, you'll be hearing from me on a potential power purchase agreement.
Just while we're doing introductions, I realized we haven't introduced Lincoln, who is with us, who is one of our new directors at McNeil, working on engineering and other issues, so just wanted to give a shout out to Lincoln, who's with us in the room.
Good meeting you all. Thank you.
Welcome.
Did that
Is Commissioner Kennedy, any of the folks
Yeah,
that are
everyone
back here?
actually in the
Okay.
entire room, except for who I think is your maybe child. So I think just to summarize, to make sure I understood, it's very hard to predict because you have to predict the timing of the peak and the amount of the peak load, and you don't know transmission fees when you set budget.
rates?
Rates.
We don't know the rates that will be in effect. I mean, we have projections, but they can be wrong too.
And then you would update that when you do a quarterly, once?
We would-
We reforecast during the year, so once we have July results, James's team says, okay, well, now we know what actually happened in July. What do we think will happen the rest of the year based on current information about energy forwards, transmission rates, transmission peaks, and anything else? Changes in the capacity market or the reserve market or anything in the power supply world is updated monthly so that we say, okay, well, here's where we budgeted to be on June 30, but now here's where we predict to be on June 30. And then we ask the other kind of major areas of the organization to do the same thing. If they know that they have certain capital projects that are going to be under or over, or certain operating expenses that they budgeted for that are going to be over significantly. So we maintain a June 30 projection throughout the year.
We would, in this context, we would typically, in that forecast, a now known rate would be used. But our budget is approved by the city council, so we don't typically re-budget. We look and see how accurate we think the budget will be month on month. That's the reforecast Emily's referring to.
So you only do that annually?
The budget,
approval?
yes, that's right.
The officially approved, city council approved budget is an annual effort, yes. But the reforecasting is our attempt to look at what we know has changed since that and understand and tell you guys what direction the budget is going. But the one part that, the prediction of the time of the peak each month from Velco and the time of our peak is pretty dynamic. So that's not normally going to get rolled into a reforecast. It's typically our best estimate as to the timing of our loads and things like that. But like, if it's cloudy and there's a whole bunch of solar on, it can really change the time of the Vermont peak a lot. Vermont has enough solar to actually almost go negative. So again, if it's a super sunny day, but it's hot, and a cloudy day and it's hot, that can really drive those predictions. It's not what we would call ratcheted. So again, the fact that we had an unusual first month, they look at it next month again. So there's no carry forward or anything like that, other than the rate, if it changes.
Thanks, James.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you.
Yep, you're
Appreciate
welcome.
it. Okay, next we're gonna get the efficiency programs update from Chris Burns.
Been a while since we've made you suffer one of these things, hasn't it?
That's not true. Just turn my mic off. You want that off? Okay. All right. So thank you for having us in. What I'd like to do this evening is just go, let me get rid of that. Go over our major energy efficiency programs, review with you how we split up the budgets to serve customers across every class, give you a sense of how we're doing within the 3-year performance period. As you may recall, all the EEUs go through a process with the Department of Public Service and then approval by the PUC, and the EEU is done in 3-year chunks. We're right in the middle of the 2024-2026 program year, so we'll give you some ideas about how we're doing there. We'd like to touch on some headwinds and challenges that we are seeing heading into 2026 and beyond, and then give you a sense of some other things that the ES team does. We are the face of the EEU, but we also do some other work that's complementary to the EEU, but also our work with our policy and planning teams on Tier 3. So I'll start with the largest programs and work my way down. So the EEU, EEC is lines with the sales. So we're 75-ish% sales to the commercial class. So our budgets line up about 75-25 commercial sector to residential sector, and our savings follow that as well. So business existing facilities, you can imagine from the smallest office to the HVAC at the hospital and everywhere in between. The team is ready to work with any business that we can help identify what are called early retrofit opportunities, meaning should you just replace your equipment early because it makes really good sense, or market opportunities. And market opportunities, you think of, I have a rooftop unit on my Cumberland Farms and my contractor tells me I've got to replace it. Can we influence you to make a better choice, a more efficient choice? So that's with a variety of equipment that you can imagine in offices, retail stores, food service, whatever the case is, we try to be there to help. HVAC and HVAC controls are now becoming the dominant measure in this program. For many, many years, lighting was it. Lighting, retrofitting from incandescent to LED, but even older technology, fluorescent to LED, with really thoughtful controls. But congratulations to Vermont, congratulations to EVT with support from BED. We have turned LEDs into the baseline, meaning the decision was made, we really don't need to support LEDs because they're the thing that's going in most of the time. So lighting was really accessible, very accessible to customers, relatively inexpensive, and you could get the wow factor. You could relight your store, you could relight your office, you could even relight your home, and you could see it immediately. And with the incentives and the energy savings that would come with it, it would be a very popular thing. Now we're into more complicated things. HVAC is not easy. HVAC lasts a long time. Some of these rooftop units are up there for 25, 30 years. Boilers, 30 plus years. Control systems. These are refrigeration systems. These are more complicated, more expensive, and they're a little bit more abstract. But this is where our world is going. We have to be able to figure out how to quickly give feedback to customers so they can make really good decisions on the more complicated systems in their buildings.
Are customers coming to you, or what's the percentage of them coming to you, as opposed to you proactively going out or going out and seeking out these opportunities?
I'm going to say it's 50-50, so it's a bunch of ways. A lot of the same design community, or design contractors and contractors, HVAC, electrical, we've been at this so long, we have these relationships. We have these relationships with some of the customers that have repeated. You go in and you look at their account history, they have been doing stuff with us for 25 years. So we're small enough where it can be that kind of everybody knows everybody.
Yeah.
High bill concerns that come into customer care. That's another place we get it. It's somebody is, and in this time in particular, and I'm going to get a little bit into that, folks are hurting, and they're looking for ways, if their cash flow from the business is down, how can they deal with their operating expenses? Can we help them on that side? So it comes from a variety of places. But again, I would say, yeah, it just comes from relationships, mostly.
Makes sense.
On to business new construction quickly. So as you may know, the state has the commercial building energy standards, which is the baseline. It is a increasingly rigorous code, meaning every 3 years or so, the Department of Public Service starts a process and goes out and looks at what's happening. And they look at folks that participate in the EVT, VGS, BED programs. They look at folks that don't. They're trying to establish what a baseline is. So how well insulated is the building? What HVAC choices are they making in terms of efficiency? And then they say, okay, well, what are other jurisdictions doing, especially in cold climate like ours? And we're going to take that code and we're going to start ratcheting it up. And as they start bringing the codes up, both in, there's a residential and a commercial, that means our job gets a little harder because the pie starts to shrink, meaning the things that we can go and incent and claim savings on always has to be above code. So that's okay, that's just the way good policy works. So that's why, things like lighting's in the code. You have to do LED, you have to do controls. There's things that you have to do that the last version of the code you didn't have to do. We have to be nimble and switch the things that we're focused on that the code doesn't cover. So the approach we take, and we've been doing this for about 8 years now, you really have two ways to do construction programs. You can come up with a checklist and you can say, go do everything on the checklist. We're going to come in and inspect, and if you get it, we are going to claim some savings based on some assumptions, and we're going to give you your check. And we got very into the whole LEED process, if you're familiar with that. Some of us became accredited professionals. And what we found was when LEED started requiring energy modeling, building energy modeling, we felt that that was really the better way for us to encourage higher performance and get to real savings, meaning we're comprehensively looking at the building as a system. We are creating a baseline model, and then the energy efficiency model is what we tried to drive people to do. Our savings is the delta between the two, essentially code and a better building. But along the way, we are then going to wait 12 months after the building's done and occupied. We're going to true up the model to the actual usage and make sure that the building is dialed in and working, because the buildings that go bad, it's usually they're bad from that first construction occupancy. Something wasn't set up right. So keeping an eye on the building for 12 months, giving feedback to the owner and the design community, we just think is a great thing to do. What we have found through the energy modeling is thoughtful envelope design, meaning really good, tight envelopes with very good ventilation, moves the needle more than anything else. And so we're putting more of our rebate money up front and helping customers get third-party thermal envelope commissioning agents. These are folks that specialize on large, complex commercial buildings, and they're making sure that attention to detail is there that drives the savings, and we get a more resilient building. So when I talk about things like buildings as batteries, and this approach helps with our demand response assets, you look at some of the buildings that have been built recently. I'll give a shout out to Hula, probably one of the most high-performance buildings we've done. That building is so resilient that we can go in and ask it to do things to its HVAC temperature, and we can see the KW drop. But they don't have a temperature problem. They don't have a comfort problem because the building is so good. And the new Burlington High School is shaping up to be the same. So these are the kinds of things that we're looking at, and the play between the EEU and the DU. The building that's in the picture, I couldn't find the quote, but the envelope commissioning agent, who now works for CX Associates, which is a Burlington-based engineering firm, sent a really nice email to the entire crew, but he really focused on the contractor. Tightest building he's ever tested. And I don't want to give the impression, especially coming out of COVID, that you hear about, well, buildings have to breathe. Well, commercial buildings like this, they breathe through balanced ventilation, highly efficient balanced ventilation. You want the shell to be tight, and you want to mechanically take care of the building. You don't want random air leaks. So just wanted to point that out because some people get a little nervous about overly tight buildings and are they healthy. So moving on to res existing buildings. This is kind of the cousin to business existing facilities, except we are looking at single family, market rate, multifamily projects, market rate low income single family. This covers the gamut of the residential sector in existing buildings. We could not do this without VGS. Their energy services team works incredibly closely with us. We share 98% of the customers, but we are continuing to see, and I think I've mentioned this in some of the monthly reports to you folks over the years, we're seeing dual fuel or hybrid buildings. So someone's put in a ductless mini split, but that ductless mini split is a partial part of the solution. They still are going to use natural gas. The house needs to be weatherized. How do we figure it out? So BED and VGS have a mechanism in place where we do the math and we just let the owner know, we're both going to help you here. We think you should be weatherized. You're going to get the same total rebate. You just may get a contribution from BED and a contribution from VGS. And the customers seem to really appreciate us doing that work behind the curtain so that they don't have to worry about it. The contractors do as well, because they're absolutely key. Champlain Valley Weatherization Service is an arm of CVOEO. They are the low-income WAP program that services Chittenden County. They are another major partner. They don't always do a lot of work in Burlington because eligible folks typically are renters for us, and the renters population is very administratively intensive for them, but we and VGS continue to try to work with them to encourage them to do more work in Burlington. Again, you know, for our low-income folks that need weatherization services, in rental, it's maybe 99% natural gas. So having VGS at the table is really, really key for our mutual customers. 3E Thermal is a relatively new partner. It's been about 2 years. The way the state Weatherization Assistance Program has decided to do it is 3E Thermal is an arm of Capstone Community Action out of Barre, and they are a statewide weatherization service for larger multifamily. So anything 5 units or bigger, it gets kicked from our weatherization service at CVOEO to these folks at Capstone. We're on our 3rd project with them. They've had some staffing struggles, but they're an impressive group, and it's really, really nice to have them in Burlington working with us and VGS. The other important thing for this program for you to know, this is customers don't distinguish between EEU and Tier 3. They just want to know, I'm in the market for an EV. I'm in the market for a charger. I want an induction stove. I want a heat pump. So this is where we just start to fold in the Tier 3 side of us, our house.
Does any of this include windows? I would think working with a window company, windows, roofing. I'm not seeing some of these other things that I think could also factor in there.
So,
or I'm completely.
Probably one of the most popular questions. Why don't you guys help with windows? And I'm going to try my best not to get into the building science of this, because I'll go off in the woods, as these guys know I can do. So if you look at a standard house, if you look at your house, right, or my house, windows under natural gas, if you're a natural gas house and you do the design heat load equation, which we all learn in energy audit school, to try to figure out what are the walls, what's the attic, what are the windows. Windows may be about 30% of your total bill. So, and that's conductive and convective, meaning the air leakage that's coming around it and the heat that's going through the glass. So 30% sounds like a lot, but if your bill's $1,000 or $1,500, and each window is going to cost you $350, $450, $550, the payback is just terrible. So if you can go after the bigger problems in a building, and that's usually the attic, separating and air sealing the attic from the rest of the house, and dealing with the basement, your window problems may start to go away. They may not be, your house is more comfortable, it performs better, and yeah, the windows eventually will be replaced because they're going to age out, but maybe you can do storms, maybe you can do other things, but windows don't pencil out economically. And that's why VGS doesn't incent them. And even if you're a heat pump building, or even if you're straight electric resistance heat, the math is not good. So, that's just the way it works out. So,
I'll just jump in to say too, there are three pane triple windows that are coming to market. They're still really costly, so to Chris's point of cost effectiveness, they're not quite ready, but they are coming, and that's something that may be here somewhat soon, because it is such a frequent first question for energy efficiency is
Sure.
my windows, I want to replace my windows. And then window attachments, like you mentioned,
Yeah.
from storms shutters to awnings to all those other things. There's a independent body like Attachments Energy Rating Council or other things, so there's potential places, but it's still really hard cost effectively to offer them as a measure.
And
So you're saying if you have all the other things really well done, you can have the leakiest windows in the world, and, yeah,
For the cost.
for the cost.
yeah, because it's the material cost, which is very high now, but it's the labor cost. I mean, it's, you know, to do it well, each window, and you maybe have 20 windows in a house, that's a big price tag.
$400 a pop or something, yeah.
Yeah, so,
And that's probably a low number, $350 for a window?
Yeah,
it probably is for a good, certainly not a triple pane, yeah,
Right.
Cheapest vinyl, $350.
yeah. So,
Chris, before you go on, I just want to also ask one quick question. This is something I know I bring up annually, but I had brought it up a couple months ago, but I do think it's important. You noted the incredible collaboration with BGS, which is awesome. But I was curious about heat pumps and thinking more specifically with ducted and the ability to do, I know we report on hybrid units, but also was curious if you could talk about where you're taking more, the ones that aren't a combo unit with gas, because I am interested in the performance, and I know they're getting better and better, and we have one that's performing extremely well, especially
good.
with a tight thermal envelope, and I think with that strategic electrification roadmap, I'm just curious if you could talk to it a bit.
it's a great question. So when we look at some of our appliance saturation work in residential, we think we're somewhere in the 60 to 70% hydronic-based systems. Boilers, you know, where you have the fin tube or the radiators, dominate our cold climate because when they went in, we just did not have a huge cooling need or desire, and then people could solve those, you know, those hours with window units, right? So you start moving yourself down the eastern seaboard, it completely flips, because you really want to use that same distribution system, and I know you know all of this same distribution system where you can just put a cooling coil in the plenum, have the condenser outside, and you can have central cool and central heat out of the same distribution system in your house. Right. So that form has been around forever. In comes cold climate centrally ducted heat pumps, and now you can do both. Use the same distribution system and do it quite well. But we just don't have a lot of forced air systems. So we have to figure out how to make ductless, you know, perform better, and also air to water's coming. I mean, being able to put a heat pump, air to water boiler in either tandem or to replace what you've got. That's the next frontier. But in terms of the centrally ducted, you'll notice on our website how we talk about centrally ducted. The range in performance at lower temperature is so dynamic that we are trying to signal to the market, we really want you to put in products that do much, much better at 5, 0, -5. And it's getting there. And then the bigger issue is the contractors are going to put in a new thermostat. That thermostat is programmed to swap. And it's going to say at an outside sensor temperature, when am I going to stop being a heat pump and I have to go back to natural gas? And where they put that set point is going to drive your cost, carbon savings, all of it. And so, was that responsive?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think, I'm curious too about more, you know, it's electric resistance backup for full electric. I'm curious how it can keep driving towards not lost opportunity by putting in hybrid units, so that we now have another 10 years before we replace for these kind of full electrification systems.
And just so I understand, is the gap that we don't offer rebates on ducted?
We do.
Oh,
Yeah, among our most generous are on ducted.
It's more just it's still nascent to have fully electric, the systems that we're talking about, and just how do we drive it? You know, how do we support it more?
yep.
That's my question.
I would say 90, if not 95% of our centrally ducted heat pump projects are with either the existing furnace or when both get replaced, get put in. We do see the 10 kW coil electric resistance with no backup.
Yeah.
Contractors in existing buildings are very, very honest with us. They just don't feel comfortable leaving a building without something else. And I think that's just the nature of the technology. I mean, though it's been around for several years now, the contractor is just trying to do right by the building.
Yeah.
So that's why the controls are so important.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Products program. This is one where we try to help customers make really good choices when they're out getting their major appliances. Hats off to Efficiency Vermont. This has been a tremendous partnership. You know, we have worked really hard to make this a statewide effort so nobody gets confused. You know, when screw-in LEDs and fixtures were part of it, it was really one of the reasons that LEDs just took off in Vermont because of just how this was promoted. You know, retail partners were so important and how easy it was for customers just to participate. And, you know, this program continues to go. It's something that is accessible for someone who is in an apartment and needs a window air conditioner or needs a dehumidifier, or a homeowner who, unfortunately, the refrigerator died. And we want them to buy the most efficient refrigerator they can. So this is a program that, you know, it's going to shift because of the appliances and some of the lighting stuff, but it's something that we use Energy Star as the baseline. We're keeping an eye on Energy Star, considering some of the new things at the federal level. We, as the EEUs, we're going to have to move fast if something happens to Energy Star, but we know that we'll be able to figure it out. That our customers will get the right signal to buy the right stuff and be supported by us. Residential new construction, moving on to that, is similar to business new construction, but it's just not as complicated. But there is a code, as I mentioned, that's the Residential Building Energy Standard, but same process, a lot of technical assistance, hand-holding, and we're trying to get folks to do much better than code. And it's not that the codes are bad. Actually, Vermont's codes have gotten quite rigorous. But to help folks go a little bit beyond, that's what we're trying to do. And there's a push to really do fully electric homes now. Can we get you to go, you know, full heat pump hot water heater, induction stove, and around a very thoughtful thermal envelope, so there's no regrets, meaning you're not getting bills that are crazy, you're not having the impact on the grid. You know, can we construct really, really good homes? Again, another great partnership between the EEUs. It's something that we offer statewide through EVT and VGS. Oh no. Why isn't this guy going now? Last one, it's not necessarily major, but I didn't want to let it go because weatherization is so important, especially as it relates. Well, I would say weatherization is just important, but with so much heat pump work going on, you know, we want to stay fluent and offer it where we can, but we don't have much of a market. So thermal energy process fuel, this is one of the earliest EEU programs using the forward capacity market money and the RGGI money to do traditional weatherization. So you would be able to find a home performance with Energy Star contractor that works for all three EEUs. You could get support to air seal and insulate your building. Ventilation is also part of it for health and safety reasons, HVAC improvements. You know, for example, you have ductwork running through your basement and it's leaky or uninsulated. That's all part of the program. But again, 98% of our customers use natural gas, so they're served by Vermont Gas. But for those that heat with oil, propane, kerosene, we're there to serve them. So on to three-year program performance. 2024 was really sluggish, and in the commercial sector in particular. New construction was, though we have some construction going on now, those projects just didn't land in 2024. They just didn't finish. And commercial existing facilities, not strong either. But we know from our partners and some conversations we have with the PUC, Around November of every year, they hold a workshop. The 3 EEUs come in and give the PUC and the department an update on how's it going, compared to the triennial plan that you gave us to start off the 3-year performance period. So we do think that there's a couple things going on. There is economic uncertainty. There are increasing costs on the renovation and building side, increased borrowing cost for building or renovating. That's just not helping in the new construction major renovation space. And I think when we look at the work we have done in the downtown core historically, that has really, really been struggling. And it's the economic uncertainty, but the community safety headwinds. And frankly, folks are just not thinking about, they're not thinking as much about the priority of a heat pump or a new refrigeration system, unless things die. And then they need us. But if the equipment is working, they're going to try to keep it working. And so that's the moment we're in right now. And I'll get into a little bit about how we're reacting to that, to help folks and let them know we're here. Even if it's just tips, tips to save, analyzing their AMI data and seeing how disciplined they are. Could they be more disciplined at nighttime and off hours? If we can show data that says, hey, your HVAC isn't relaxing, you could save some money if you would do X, Y, and Z. If that's what we need to do, that's what we do. And if we don't get a project out of it, well, we're just here to serve the customer at this point, from that perspective. So Q3 2025 is definitely livening up. We have some really large new construction projects that are scheduled to complete by the end of 2026. First phase of Burlington Square, AKA City Place. The high school is on track. The high school the design is looking incredible, and a few other projects will land that are going to really help catch up for the deficit in 2024. Right now, we're projecting between 80 to 90% of the performance goal of the 12,170 megawatt hours, and expending between 85 to 95% of the almost 7.6 million three-year budget. Could things knock that out a little bit? If the high school doesn't finish in time for us to claim the savings, that would be a problem, but we have no indication that that's going to happen. And there's a couple other large projects that they're so far along that we just don't think they're not going to finish for us. So, and just in general, if we look at the body of work over since 1989, when the programs began and we got the $11.3 million efficiency bond, it's quite a story. I mean, we are using less energy in this city than we did in 1989, and we don't think, our programs. We think our programs are a partner to that. But as I said, the customer support has been off the charts over the years, just consistently over the years. But the energy codes and appliance standards that I talked about, they're a part of it too. But it's to use less than we did in 1989. For those of us who've been here for a while, a lot of new square footage in this city. The city has grown up, so we're feeling pretty good about that.
Can I ask a question? How does the EEU program work in the sense that if we don't hit our performance goals nor expend the budget, what happens with those funds, and or are there repercussions, or how does that work?
So a couple things. With the money at the end of a 3-year period, if you have unspent, uncommitted funds, meaning you haven't made a rebate commitment to a project that just didn't happen to finish in the year, but you're going to pay it out in quarter 1 or quarter 2 of the next year, then you can request to carry that over. And the PUC, there's a process with the PUC. And if it's unspent, uncommitted, and it's over 5%, it gets returned to the ratepayer as a bill credit on the EEC. So it just goes into
Right
that.
across.
It just lowers the EEC rate in a following year. And in terms of not hitting the goal, Well, every 6 years, the 3 EEUs go through what's called an overall performance assessment. And they take that into account. And they say, well, hey, you know, what happened? Will they take into account things like a pandemic? You know, things like that. I mean, there's a lot of metrics that go into the DPS's recommendation and the PUC's recommendation to maintain the orders of appointment for the 3 EEUs.
So, and the performance assessment affects what after? Based on the performance assessment, what's done accordingly?
It is another appointment to remain an EEU for.
So you hit a level and you can be appointed?
You got it.
Okay.
You got it.
Great.
It's not a given.
Yeah.
You know, you have to perform to maintain it. For us, as a DU, we're an appointment, so is VGS for Efficiency Vermont, VEIC. It's a, you know, they're not a distribution utility, but we all go through the same process to get that appointment from the PUC. And the question is, can another entity serve your customers better? That's what it comes down to.
So it's not a contract, right? But in sort of layperson's terms, you would lose the contract, is basically what you're saying, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Got it.
And I'm coming to the end here. The challenges that, you know, I've kind of touched on this, so I won't go through much of it, but, you know, the business existing facilities folks, just that needs to be robust for us to meet our savings targets. And the community issues, the safety issues, as the mayor talks about, you know, I'm a longtime resident as well as an employee. It would seem that it's going to take several years for this to get us back to a place where, you know, business customers have the ability to really focus on their sustainability goals and some other efficiency goals. So I think we just need to acknowledge that. The other one that is, you know, on our radar is the number of new construction zoning applications through the Department of Permitting and Inspections has hit an all-time low. So we serve with engineering on the Technical Review Committee, which is a monthly meeting out of DPI, and it is where you as a developer come in front of the zoning, permitting, all city departments are there, and you are going to give your earliest schematics on what you want to do. And before you spend a lot of money on design, you're going to get feedback from the fire department, from the electric department, can we serve the project. And you are going to, you're going to say, here's what I want to do. You're going to give us some early ideas, and that has been canceled. I think, 7 out of the last 10, because no projects have come through. In my experience, it's never been that. So it just is concerning, because by the time that meeting happens to the time we go in and inspect, if it participates in our program, it's a 3 to 4 year process. So when we're looking at, okay, well, what is our business new construction program going to be going forward into the next planning horizon, 27 to 29, it's not looking particularly robust. And as I said, there's, I think, a number of reasons why that's happening. So, yes?
What do you think the key levers that you can pull are to change that trajectory?
So, for new construction, it's, you know, we don't have the budgetary resources to influence a Burlington Square or, you know,
So you
these.
think existing buildings is the way to make up for it, and how do you think you can drive that participation?
So if you go down to bullet 5, serves on the Burlington 2030 District Steering Committee with VGS.
Wait, say that again?
So the Burlington 2030 District Steering Committee is something that we've been working on for probably 7 years now. It is made up of the business community, business owners, architects, designers, and it comes out of a sustainability mission out of the AIA that wants to reduce energy use in existing buildings. It's a public-private partnership, and you can read it on our website, where we wanted to expose a larger group of the existing business customers and institutional customers to BED and VGS's programs. So we have doubled down through that steering committee. We have said we have to reach out to these folks. We have to try to get the business community to engage with us more. But it's not a very good time right now for the business community. So discretionary investments in their buildings is just not there. So when I say things like we're now focused on no-cost, low-cost tips, it's really helping them with their just cash flow. Now, are we going to be out of this in a year? Are we going to be out of it in 2? We want to stay in front of them, and if they need help from an energy basis, we're here to help. But can we influence them to change their HVAC right now? Unfortunately, I don't think so. Can we help them and let them know, hey, do you know how old your HVAC is? Do you know that if it's in the 15 to 20 year lifespan, you should start planning now? We're here to help. So that you don't do that emergency replacement on a February night or on 4th of July weekend, and your contractor is forced to get whatever the distributor has. That may not be the best, most efficient thing you can get. So one of the messages we're giving is, can we help you plan? Because it keeps us relevant to them, and it also gives them some feedback that a lot of these business owners don't have facilities people. They're the facilities people. So we're trying to say, hey, take a breath. How old is your equipment? And let's make sure we're ready. And I'm sure you remember this from your days. But back real quickly on the top of the list, we talked about the customer care team, and we sit purposely next to them. And if they get into a situation where they really need some help with a customer who has some concerns, we have all kinds of tools to help, and we'll go to the field. We're very proud of the fact that so many customers allow us on their side of the meter, meaning we're in their buildings and they're happy to have us. Support of the Tier 3 programs, as I mentioned before. As Darren mentioned with the TUC meeting, we provide a fair amount of technical support to our DPI colleagues on the rental housing weatherization ordinance, the existing thermal carbon fee ordinance, and the now energy benchmarking ordinances. And the next one that's pretty interesting, and it does tie back to our business new construction program, is the Giants grant. Part of ES's role is really trying to see what we can do on the demand response side or the flexible load management side. If you can get a Hula or Champlain College or some of the other buildings to really play with us in terms of relaxing set points and doing it through their building energy management systems, which can be done automatically. So there's no pain, no hassle. This is what we're working on to try to get these buildings to be batteries for us. So we're looking forward to doing that. I mentioned the 2030 district. And some of the other stuff quickly, back to the energy codes. The Vermont legislature statewide has been concerned about compliance with energy code. I can say that our Department of Permitting Inspections and the clerk treasurers does a very nice job making sure that at least people pulling permits in Burlington, you're going to get flagged for RBs or CBs if you're just replacing one window in your house or building. They do a really nice job at least exposing contractors and Burlington residents and business owners that these codes exist and you have to comply. So we were invited to sit on this legislative working group to try to figure some of this stuff out. The other two come through the Energy Action Network. There's a Weatherization at Scale Committee just trying to talk about how to scale up weatherization better, how to do workforce development, keep the quality up. And there's also one that's laser focused on tenant weatherization protection. How do we deal with weatherization issues in rental housing, which is obviously real important for us. We're 60% renter in Burlington. And I think that is it.
Any other questions, comments? Go for it.
Chris, can I just add one thing to that real
Too many
quick?
questions.
No.
Go ahead.
I, as you can tell, like this strategic, what's it called? Direction dashboard. I can't follow it on the net zero stuff in terms of targets. So I love your charts that you presented in the thing on, the bigger picture. How do we understand the more detailed picture? Because it says see net zero roadmap goals below, but then it says those are 2023, I think, targets, and they don't match to above. So how do we understand that? Or is that to you? Who do I ask? Or what are
Probably-
the ways to know if we're being successful?
Probably Emily would be best
Emily, is
positioned.
that you? So that's,
So the net zero goal is a 2030 goal, okay? And we annually ask Synapse, what's Synapse's full name?
Synapse Energy Economics.
Economics, thank you. Which is a consulting firm that we engage to develop the net zero energy roadmap. Every year we ask them to update the key metrics, which are, greenhouse gas emissions, those that are here, right? The number of homes receiving, heat pumps for space heating, commercial heat pumps, EV registrations, all of that stuff. Okay. So 2023, 2024. Oh, what happened here? I see what you mean. It looks like when I updated this, okay. So when Synapse did the net zero energy roadmap, they said, okay, in order to be where we want to be by 2030, here's the pace you need to be on for EV registrations. Here's the pace you need to be on for residential heat pumps. And so what attempted to do in the dashboard was to say, so for example, the residential heat pumps for space heating, in 2023, to be on track, we needed to have incentivized or have in Burlington 8,615 heat pumps. As of 2024, we actually had 2,320.
and those don't tie to what you just talked about with EEU. They're separately tracked, all of these things?
There are two buckets of heat pumps. So new construction, which doesn't get a Tier 3 incentive. Tier 3 is going towards existing. New construction is done as a system. But
Right.
there's not, I can't think of the last multifamily building that was not just heat pumped, 100% heat pumped. So we have the EEU side of heat pumps, and then we have the Tier 3 side of heat pumps.
And Tier 3 is a distribution utility obligation under the Vermont Renewable Energy Standard,
Okay.
right? So all electric distribution utilities in Vermont have now 5 tiers of things they have to do under the Renewable Energy Standard. Tier 3 is what's called the strategic electrification part of the Renewable Energy Standard, and that requires each electric distribution utility in the state to reduce fossil fuel uses by electrifying things. So we're obligated to put in place a certain number of megawatt hour equivalents of fossil fuel reduction each year, and every year our target or obligation grows per the state law. And so what we do is that we couple, for many incentives, not all, but many, we couple a DU incentive that gives us credit toward our Tier 3 obligation with an energy efficiency utility incentive for making the building more efficient.
Okay. That helps. So as far as EEU, your two main performance targets are expenditure and performance savings.
They're the two major ones. There's a host of other quantifiable performance indicators, such as summer peak KW savings, some winter peak KW savings. We have a low income spend minimum performance requirement. So there's a few, but at the end of the day, it's the big ones. It's the megawatt hours, megawatts, and the budget.
Perhaps to follow up on Commissioner Kenny's question, we could see an update on the other key performance
Sure.
indicators.
Yep.
And see where we're at, what are the goals, what are the levels, and then where you're at.
absolutely.
And how often do we do that, this type of review? Is it regular or scheduled, or is that up to us?
I think it.
We talked about making it a more frequent item, probably not at the length that we did tonight, but, which was good, but maybe.
Much longer next time.
But maybe a more concise update quarterly.
Quarterly.
And then maybe a lengthier one like this annually, if that's good with Chris.
We like to see Chris once in a while.
This was
Fair
very
enough.
helpful,
Thank you,
Chris.
Chris.
Yes.
Yeah,
Very
Yes.
informative.
Can I just add one quick segue, Chris, to what you said?
It's-
You were mentioning building giants and demand response. That is the tool we could use to control our load at the time of the Vermont peak load to try to reduce those transmission costs you were asking about earlier. So if we can affect that load by calling for load reductions at that time, that is a way we can save those and put a thumb on that scale.
And that's through what? Will you repeat that?
Demand response, and the Building Giants program is an example of demand response. So it's requesting customers to either reduce load or potentially discharge battery capability in order to reduce load. Both of those things would reduce load at times where those transmission peaks are set.
Batteries at the utility level or the building?
Well, you would do it by customer, but it rolls up to the utility level and turns into a reduction in our load. And that load at the time of the Vermont peak is what sets our costs.
Okay.
How many people do we have that are set to do that? I mean, how are they set to actually do that? To what he's saying?
It is, we're recruiting right now, but we have a 12 to 15 very large customers.
Right. Those would be the ones that would
perform.
Move the needle,
I
for
mean,
sure.
it's, if you think of our defeat the peak effort,
Yeah.
it's, some of those customers that performed incredibly well for us. Now we're gonna see if we can take them into this.
Yeah, this is taking defeat the peak to a whole nother scale.
Right, yeah.
So it's taking us from a 2 to 400 kW demand reduction potential to a megawatts of demand reduction potential. And then that would be rolled up with any batteries we might deploy. Utility scale batteries can be used the same way. So I just wanted to bring that back to sort of, how you can affect some of the cost causation like we talked about earlier.
Great. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you,
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
Okay, next on our agenda, we have the proposed amendments to street lighting tariff.
I can-
James? Oh,
I can just maybe kick us off, if that's okay, James, just because I'm fresh from presenting on the same item at the Board of Finance the other night. And then if we have a level of detail question, we could jump to James. So very concisely, this was precipitated by the Burlington Police Department, which has a budget to add security cameras, and they wanted to add them on our poles, connect them. And we did not have a billing mechanism to do that without metering each camera individually, which would be prohibitively expensive, particularly for the very relatively de minimis amount of electricity they'd be using. So we worked with them, talked with them, and came up with this concept to do essentially the estimated billing, meter one camera, and use the estimates from that to do estimated billing for the remaining cameras. We'd like to apply that as well to parking ban lights that the city would operate, very similar concept. And then we did a bunch of cleanup in here with help from James's team, Munir, and the engineering team, and others to really try to have the language here, be updated, because I don't think we've done this update to this tariff in a number of years. So everything you see with the red lines here are in service of adding the estimated billing option for the municipal-owned security cameras, the municipally owned parking ban, and then we eliminated or updated language for other items to match current technology and current practice. So that's the very high-level layman's view, and then if there's interest in diving any deeper, James has the detail if the commission's interested.
Any questions or comments? Nope. Could I have a motion? And it's in the packet, it's the.
Yep.
Andy.
Thank you this was very informative and helpful to have it ahead of time, so easy to approve this. I move to approve and recommend this, the City Council authorize the General Manager of the Burlington Electric Department or designee to file the updated street lighting tariff with the Vermont Public Utility Commission and to take such actions as may be needed to secure its approval.
Second.
All in favor? Or any discussion, excuse me, any discussion?
Just that aren't the parking ban, how do the parking ban lights come into that? Or are they already?
Well, we want to do a similar
metered
kind of
or-
process with them where we don't have to meter them either, and we can just do estimated bill. Correct, exactly.
Yeah,
Different
Well, how are they being accounted for now?
well, the question is, to give you a sense of the order of magnitude we're talking about for dollars here, I want to say that the cameras are going to be an annual revenue of about $250, and the parking lights are about $1,300. So we're trying to make sure that we have a well-documented procedure that doesn't require metering them. We have test meters out there on the parking lights, and we will maintain those so that we can make sure that our estimates of consumption are correct. But, again, it's, this is, we're just treating them the same way. And we rolled them into the streetlights because given that such a small amount of revenue, that billing it on kilowatt hours doesn't even make sense.
Right.
Hitting them for a customer charge and a meter installation the cameras use 80 watts an hour. So again, they just don't add up to anything. But we have to have a tariff that we can comply with, and we can't just decide that it's not worth doing a tariff, even though this is going to be a truly de minimis amount of money. We do have to make sure we have a tariff we can follow.
Makes sense, got it.
Great, thanks. Any other discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any against? Passes, motion passes.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, we have the Relevate Power.
And we're expecting to need an executive session to discuss terms and pricing. So I think I would turn it to James if you have any comments you want to offer for public session. And then I think we would go to the commission for a motion for executive session. We anticipate coming out of executive session, there would be a potential vote. So I just wanted to signal that for our friends at Town Meeting TV as well.
So, as is typical in transactions, the pricing terms are confidential, and we will disclose those in executive session, and then come out and ask you to vote on the motion if you agree. The proposal, and Darren is going to have to give you a little more color on this. This is a proposal that, of all things, came to Darren, and he usually blocks the goal for me on marketing outreach, but for whatever reason, he decided this had merit. And it turned out to have merit. We do not have a lot of options right now for hydropower. We have an expiring hydropower contract with First Light that will come off at the end of this year. We need to replace that to maintain our 100% renewability and the value we get from a number of statutory exemptions from being 100% renewable. This appears to be our best option right now. But again, Darren, how did they get a hold of you? I don't remember.
Yeah, we get a lot of random outreach as folks in the energy space probably are aware. And in this case, I received a phone call and an email from them sort of cold out of the blue. I hadn't worked with them previously, but they had hydro assets available to discuss. And when anyone has renewable energy in the New England region or connectable to the New England region, we're interested. And so it was a good, it was good that I didn't simply dismiss the inquiry, and we were able to follow up, and it brings us to tonight.
Yeah, and so again, the purpose of this contract is to replace at the end of this year the expiring First Light hydro contract. So it's replacing hydro with hydro when the existing hydro contract expires on 12/31. So that's really all I would sort of say. And I can answer general questions in open session, but I can't answer pricing questions in open session.
Are there any general questions before we move to executive session? Okay. Motion to move to executive session?
I move to find premature general public knowledge of the relevant power contract terms would clearly place Burlington Electric Department at a substantial disadvantage per Title I, Section 313 A1 of Vermont statutes.
Any discussion on the motion?
We need a second on the motion, though.
Oh, sorry.
Second.
Second on the motion, thank you. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
All ayes, passes. Next.
I think we have a question on the second motion.
Yeah.
Is this, there's a statement here, without
Says
BED
without
staff?
BED staff? Is that because
Oh.
it's only?
Oh, normally.
No, we should have at least myself, Emily, and James present, if you can amend
So
that.
if we just say
Okay,
with.
and
Yes,
with-
you can say
yeah,
with
that's
BED
what,
staff.
All right.
I move the commission enter executive session with BED staff to discuss relevant power contract terms and provisions of Title I, Section 313A, 1A of Vermont statutes.
Second.
Second. Any discussion?
Good at those.
On the
Well,
motion?
I gotta go at 7:15.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passes at 7:06.
Yeah.
We're back from executive session, and we have Relevate motions. Do we have someone want to read the first motion?
I will. I
Move
I
that.
move.
I move,
Yes.
that's the word, I was looking for the verb. I move that we approve motion one, that the Burlington Electric Commission authorizes the general manager or his delegee to enter a contract for up to 50,000 megawatt hour MWH of energy and RECs and capacity, i.e. renewable energy with Relevate Power for a term of up to 5 years, beginning no earlier than January 1, 2026, with a cost structure not to exceed that discussed in executive session.
Have a second?
Second that motion.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's 4 with Commissioner Whitaker having departed. All right, motion passes. Do we have a motion for the second portion, or second motion?
Do I say this?
I
Yeah.
move.
I move. Motion 2, the Burlington Electric Commission further authorizes the general manager or his delegee to seek approval from the Burlington City Council to extend the just described contract for an additional 5-year term for a total of 10 years from its start date commencing at the end of the initial 5-year term at the same price.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Any discussion? Sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, that's 4 in favor. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Final topic on the agenda is Commissioners' check-in. Is there anything Commissioners have additional questions on or comments at the end of the meeting?
Yeah, I just want to again say thank you to Commissioner Whitaker for her years of service and on this commission and helping guide us forward. And you know, she did a real bang-up job, and we're going to miss her. And again, also welcoming Commissioner Kenny.
Great. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Motion
Move to adjourn?
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned, 7:42.
Thank you.